The Omnissiah shines upon one person tonight, and we're going to explore that on the Vox Cascadia podcast. Hi, my name's Chuck. I had an amazing weekend at the coast with my buddies, and we were going to talk about that, but the internet it's not shining upon us as the Omnissiah is. So instead, we're going to do an episode all about the ad bank. And Connor, how excited are you about this?
This is the greatest day of my life, probably.
You're getting married in like 2 months, not even a month, like a month and a half, and this is the greatest day of your life.
Well, that'll be so far. That'll obviously take priority number one.
Well, it's the day I've been dreading, and yes, we're gonna turn it over to you. You've recently updated your guide to Hunter Clade and getting a lot of like praise on the internet for it. So we're gonna give you a chance to talk about where Hunter Clade are right now and how best to play them if you hate yourself.
Well, if you hate yourself, that's sad. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't, because life can be so wonderful, especially when you're playing the Hunter Clade. But yeah, Hunter Clade. Like you said, I've got my guy that just came out. By pure chance, it was pretty lucky that it ended up landing up on the day we're recording this. Sorry, Tyler. I tried the Omnissiah blessings to make it work, and you'd be able to join us with the internet, but both me and him are having technical difficulties, so that's always fun.
Yeah, so if Connor sounds a little funny, it's because he's talking through his phone. And I think did you go to Kaiser, Oregon and knock out his internet just so we could talk about this?
I don't have that time of the day to drive that much.
But you have the dedication though, and I believe in you.
No, I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, we did have an amazing weekend at the beach. We had access to a beach house this past weekend. Myself, Connor, Tyler, our good friend Nick, and his buddy Johan were there to play a bunch of kill team. Sam, coastal native down there, joined us for a day as well too, and we'll talk about that next week because the internet sucks. So we're going to talk Hunter Clade, and we're going to make all of the Connor's dreams come true. So let's talk about the Hunter Clade kill team. Connor, take us through the operatives first. So there's quite a bit of choice you have in this team. It's like you can even take more than a full roster, right?
Yes, I believe last time I did the math, if you were to take literally every single option, you would need 53 or 54, something like that, slots. There is a ridiculous amount of operatives in the team, mostly coming down to between Skitarii and Sicarians.
So tell me about the Skitarii and the Sicarians.
Yes, so if you're not familiar with the AdMech at all, the Skitarii are the little guys in the robes, like often either with the hood or like kind of the metal knight helmet. And then the Sicarians are the ones that are like super, super body horror-esque, where like all their limbs have been replaced with robotic stuff and they bend like in 4 different directions. And the Sicarians come in 2 flavors, either the infiltrators, which are like kind of sneaky guys, they have like kind of UFO dome-shaped heads, or the rust stalkers that have like gas masks and giant blades.
Now we can basically just like knock off of this Qatari list the Rangers, right?
Yes, I think they're trash, which is a shame because I absolutely adore their models. They're wonderful in 40K, and I really like the cute little robot eyes. But I think for the most part, the Vanguard are better in pretty much every situation.
What's the major difference between the two? Why are we taking Vanguards rather than Rangers? Because the Rangers do look awesome and the Vanguard look kind of stupid.
No, Vanguard look great. I like them both, but Rangers definitely have a little bit more of the AdMech disrobed appearance. So there's 2 main differences between them. The Rangers have a galvanic rifle, which across the board my team hits on 3s, which is nice. So it's a bolter profile 3-4 with P1, which is pretty good. We see it all the time on Intercession. Mighty Lethal 5 helps, but the downside for the Rangers' main weapon is that it's got heavy, and on a team that has a lot of movement bonuses, that is just bad. Heavy is an unfortunate keyword, and I hate it, and I want it to get changed.
That seems like it seems like for an operative that's kind of like almost like an Imperial Guard, they shouldn't have heavy on all their weapons.
Yeah, because they don't get them on the guns like their gunner options, which is where it'll take them the most time. But just in general, I'd rather have the Vanguard, who their base gun is 2-4, also hitting on threes, but with rending. And rending is great because this team has a ton of rerolls, and with hitting on threes, you can often, if need be, fish for a crit using one of your hits because odds are it'll roll into a hit again. But even though it's technically less damage, it spikes just as hard, and you have ways of boosting it through equipment. And it doesn't have heavy, so if you ever have a situation where you need to kill a target, you're not limited to only 3 inches of movement, which is really nice.
But really, the best part about the Vanguards versus the Rangers is their aura, right?
Yes, the Vanguard have a rad saturation aura because the Vanguard use radium carbines, and the best way I like to describe it is because they are carrying weapons that are so radioactive. Imagine Pigpen from the Peanuts, but instead of dirt and dust, it's radioactive decay.
And what's it do?
It means that anytime you are within 2 of an enemy operative, as long as you are visible, they count as injured, which is extremely useful.
All right, that's the good news we need, not the we don't need the lore stuff. Let's talk about strategery.
Strategery, okay, I will try and keep my lore self to a minimum. But yeah, rad saturation is great. Anytime you can make an operative hit one worse, that's good. It's incredible into stuff like Felgor because, for the most part, they were hitting on fours and have relentless. Now they're even worse because they only have ceaseless most of the time. But if you can make a melee operative go from hitting on fours to hitting on fives, you can survive a lot of stuff. And similarly, it doesn't super much improve your chances against things like, assault intercessors, but it comes into play. There are times when making someone go from hitting on threes to hitting on fours comes into play. And I've had times where my opponent has rolled, like two or three threes. And because it's a Vanguard, they can't strike with any of that. So my Vanguard, gunner survives melee combat with an assault intercessor, which is always hilarious.
All right, you're getting real into the weeds while we're
Mm-hmm.
just learning this team. So let's bring
I'm
it down a
sorry.
notch.
I'm
I know,
sorry.
I know. This is like Christmas for you.
It
But
really
like
is.
let's dumb it down for me, who has painted one Skitari and wants to paint the rest of them like the Mars. And
Chuck, please don't paint the Mars. Not
I know,
because I have anything
I
against Mars, but just don't.
you do.
You
Okay.
always.
We want to bring this down. We want to be this like the newcomer's guide to Hunter Clade, and you're drinking from the Hunter Clade fire hose, which I'm sure
Okay,
has a lot of technology. Okay.
it does.
All right. So let's go. We're talking about the operatives. Okay.
Yes.
So Hunter Clade can select one operative from the following list. So who do you take for the leader? There's like four different options. And let's go with the most used leader.
The most used and pretty much the 99.9% case is going to be the Skitari Vanguard Alpha. Go ahead.
Okay. And then why are we taking the Vanguard Alpha most of the time?
So the big thing, like we just discussed, is the rad saturation aura. That's extremely useful. And then the Vanguard have a built, or rather, the Skitari Alphas have a built-in ability called Control Edict, which is once per turning point. When a friendly operative is activated within 3 of the alpha, you can select another friendly operative also within 3 of the leader. After the first one goes, the second one goes. So you essentially get to make 2 people GA2, and that is extremely powerful.
So you get to make two people, or you get to GA2 off of the leader.
Either any 2 people. The leader can be either the first or the second, or neither, as long as everyone's just within 3 of the leader. Is all it requires.
All right, so we're going Skitari Vanguard Alpha. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 9 other operatives.
9 or 10, yes.
All right, how do we get 9 or 10?
So, like we discussed, there's the Skitari and the Sicarians. If you are bringing 5 Sicarians, your team is limited to 10 operatives total. But if you are bringing only 4 of them, you get to bring essentially an extra operative, so you can have 7 Skitari and 4 Sicarians.
So let's just say we're playing intercession for most of this. Okay.
Okay.
What's the mix you're gonna bring?
If you're fighting elites, so any Marine team minus the Night Lords, you are going to go 5 and 5.
So 5 Skitari and 5 Sicarians.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about the Skitari units you can bring a little bit. So we have So just talk me through kind of your basic build going up against an elite team, not Nemesis Claw.
Okay.
What are you going to bring?
So,
Skatari side.
yeah, Skitarii side, you're going to have two gunners. You're always going to bring the plasma caliber. It's just essentially a, plasma gun. Always great, always useful. And then the arc rifle, which is kind of like AdMech's specific unique gunner, which that profile is 4 dice, hitting on threes, 4-5 AP1. So it's a crack grenade essentially, but full range. And most excitingly, it's got stun. And anytime stun goes off, it's pretty useful, especially into elites.
So we got two gunners, and we have how many left?
Then you've got three more options. One of those options is, of course, going to be the Vanguard Alpha. And in that case, similar thing. I bring the Arc Pistol because it's the same profile as the Arc Rifle, but hitting on twos. And then you bring the Taser Goad because it gives you lethal 5 and stun, which can occasionally keep him alive, which is nice.
So it's Taser Goad on your Alpha.
Yep.
Okay, so that's 3 of the 5 operatives.
Mm-hmm. Then you're just going to bring what's called the Dictat, which is just their fancy AdMech word for comms boy. Is this a standard comms guy? Be within 6 invisible, pass an APL. Always useful. Always take it. And
Okay,
then,
so we got 4 out of 5.
yep. And then the final one is one of the more unique pieces to the AdMech. It is the Surveyor. And the Surveyor has an Omnispecs, which is like the AdMech version of an Auspecs. It's better than the normal one. And what it does is really, really cool because the Surveyor's ability is the Omnispecs ability, and what you can do with that is you just select any enemy on the board. You don't even need visibility, just any enemy, and then select an ally within 3 of the Surveyor, and the Surveyor, of course, can select themselves. And then when that ally shoots at that enemy in the turning point, you ignore areas of smoke, so smoke grenades, smoke stacks from knockman terrain, any smoke you ignore. The gun gains no cover, which is always kind of useful. And then, most importantly, the enemy operative cannot be obscured, which gives you an incredible amount of power.
So we've got Alpha, 2 gunners, Dictat, and Surveyor.
Yep.
Okay, and then we're going over to the Sicarians. What 5 Sicarians we're bringing? Because we're bringing 5, right?
Yes, that is correct. So, most of the time, you're going to be at the bare minimum. You're going to be bringing 4 Ruststalkers. If you're into Intercession, they have 2 weapon types. You're going to be bringing the weapon type that is 4/6 and Rending, and fishing for those crits to help burn through the larger HP pools.
What's that called?
That is the Transonic Blades. And then their other option is the Cord Claw and Transonic Razor, which is just 5 attacks, 4/5 damage, but with balance. So it's a trade off of, do you want to reroll for slightly less balance, or do you want no reroll for a higher chance of like huge damage?
So are we taking all Rust Stalkers? Or are we taking Infiltrators too?
Most of the time, it will come down to the game mode. If it is loot or secure, I'd often recommend bringing a single infiltrator because they have a sneaky get type ploy where you can, just deploy them outside of 6 of enemies and they'll spawn. And that's really good for loot for obvious reasons because you can just first activation steal one of their easy points and then give yourself like a 4-2 advantage. And infiltrators are pretty reliable weapons as well. Both the Sicarians flavors come in 10 wounds, so that's a pretty decent breakpoint. And then the infiltrators have a 4 dice power weapon, hitting on threes, and then can either bring a ceaseless bolter profile or a flechette blaster, which hits on threes with relentless, but is range 6.
So we've got the team figured out. We've got 5 and 5 each. This is the kind of take. Would you say this is take all comers?
No, I'd say that's the elites. The take all comers would be 7/4, and the only difference there is you're just dropping one of the Sicarians to then bring 2 basic shock troopers, which are the normal trooper version of Skitarii Vanguard.
So one thing that the AdMech, the Hunter Clade get is the doctrine imperatives. So talk me through those just a little bit.
Yeah, so when AdMech came out, they're kind of like a more elite version of Guard, and these are essentially their easiest way to explain it is their Guardsman orders. It's received multiple changes throughout the teams come out, so now it's as simple as described as you get to pick 4 options, and they each give you a slight bonus. One option gives you a reroll in shooting attacks, one gives you a reroll in combat, one gives you a reroll when making a saving throw, and the other one gives you +1 inch to your movement characteristic for the turn. And during the strat phase, you get to choose one of those, which is always useful. And what's kind of unique about them is since they're so good, and you're already kind of an elite-ish profile, hitting on threes, saving on fours. The thing is, if you use one of those imperatives a second time, it comes with a corresponding downside. So if you use the better shooting one twice, then on the second time you activate it, you have slightly worse melee, and vice versa. And then if you use the better movement one twice, you have worse. You can no longer retain cover type thing.
So wait, if you don't have the depreciation if you only use it once?
That is correct. It used to be it automatically turned on. Thankfully, they got rid of it because they were really, really rough.
So does that mean so is that if you use the same imperative 2 turns in a row or like 2 turns during the game?
2 turns during the game. It does not have to be in a row. So if I use, say, like better shooting turn 2 and then use it again turn 4, the negative side kicks in.
Gotcha. Do you ever use and there's one, the equalized imperative that does nothing. You ever use that?
Not really anymore because when AdMech first came out, you had to choose an imperative at the start and then could only change it once. So oftentimes I'd end up using it. Now the fact that you can change it every turn, I rarely end up using it because most of the time it's better if like nothing else is there just to turn on Bulwark because saving throws are always useful.
All right, let's talk about the strategic ploys.
Yes. So there's four of them. The first three kind of correspond to one of the flavors of types of troopers first. So you got Martial Protocol, which is if you're a Vanguard, you get to make a reroll in shooting attacks if you're on an objective marker or within 6 of your deployment's drop zone, or excuse me, of your opponent's drop zone. So pretty good. There's a way you can essentially get double balance, which on a 3-up ballistic skill is extremely reliable. The ranger side of that is in part one of the reasons why I don't bring rangers because the way to get the reroll for them is you cannot move that turn, and there are rarely situations where you're just able to shoot, directly at an enemy unless it's like turn 3 or 4.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, and then neurostatic interference.
Neurostatic interference is the infiltrator one, and that one is really nice into teams that are heavily reliant on rerolls. So Felgor, Warp Coven, vet guard, stuff like that, where it essentially makes it that if you are within 6 of any infiltrator on the map, you cannot reroll shooting or attack. Shooting or melee combat dice. For the opponent only. You still get all your rerolls, but your opponent can't, which is really good for a command point. And if you have
And
like,
then
oh, sorry, go ahead.
nope, go for it.
Yeah, that's really useful because you can bring up to 5 if you really need to. Most of the time, you're only bringing 2, but having 2 bubbles of 6-inch or rather a 12-inch circle essentially of no rerolls is super good. I'd often recommend using it on a map where you can just hide infiltrators in heavy cover.
And then accelerate agents.
Yes, this one is the best ploy in the game in my opinion. Not quite that good, but it's up there. Rustloggers, they can fight twice, and the first fight is free. That is incredible for how powerful they are in killing, because it means you can set up stuff like charge, fight and kill, and then loot, which is always good, because the fight is free.
And this is how you kind of like buff your APL, right? Or how you can make them 3 APL essentially.
Yeah, it's just really good because you're pseudo 3 APL. So one thing that's nice is on Into the Dark, if there's an enemy behind a doorway and the doorway's closed, you can stand and conceal, then move up to the doorway, open it, and be behind the wall so you still relatively have heavy cover while on a conceal order, and then fight for free from a hatchway fight or something. So it's extremely good, and it's really, really nice for just clearing an enemy while essentially making it impossible to take you out back.
And then what about calculated approach?
Calculated approach, not really the greatest, but when you use it with bulwark imperative, it gets really strong. Essentially, it's the thing where if you're making a saving throw, if you roll a crit, you can turn one of your fails into a success. So yeah, you want to combo that with bulwark imperative. So you're rolling 4 dice. Odds are you roll a 6 there, and then you can essentially guarantee a hit and a crit save from that, which is really good at keeping us alive.
So beyond the strat ploys, the pre-turn stuff, let's talk attack ploys. So pursuers.
Yeah, Pursuers, it's very neat, but this is in part why I don't bring Rangers, is because it only really applies to Rangers. And what it allows you to do is when you're doing a scouting step, if you choose the recon option, you can spend a command point to then have two rangers also get to make the free dash action, which is cool, but they don't have fly, which kind of kills it for me. And if you bring the infiltrate option, the rangers can also swap their order in addition to whoever you chose originally.
So you can dash and do infiltrate.
No, you can do dash if you choose the recon, option, and you can do the change orders if you bring the infiltrate option.
Gotcha. And then command override.
Command override's really useful because it just means when you activate an operative, say they're on an imperative that's not really going to help them, you can spend a command point and swap them to whichever one you choose. It's really reliable for someone's just outside of Rustalker's charge range. Nah, put it back on aggressor imperative. Now you have a 10-inch threat range, and you can pretty much hit any target on the board.
Now, if you say select a doctrine imperative that you've used previously, does the debuff happen at that point too?
That is correct. The debuff would kick in. However, for a single operative, that's relatively okay. The big thing to point out is say you turn on one you have not yet used team wide, that still does count for the first activation. So if you then use that, like say it's turn 2, and I put a guy on Conquer Imperative, and I've yet to use that, and then turn 3, I go back to Conquer Imperative for team wide, there will now be the negative effect with it.
And that only turns it on for that one person, right?
That is correct. Only for the operative that is activated, which is why I mostly just use it for I need another inch of movement. Let me spend a command point.
I
Because
mean,
at
if
that
we could
point, the
all
next.
just spend a command point for another inch, we would.
Yeah, I don't get what you're implying.
It's a dick joke.
Ah,
Concealed
okay.
position.
Yeah, this is just a sneaky get, but for an infiltrator, super useful. It is just always reliable to forward deploy and very little downside to it. I like to use it on an infiltrator and then give them the servo skull equipment. We're skipping ahead, but a servo skull equipment is 2 EP, and once per turn you get to do a free mission action with that operative. So on loot, I love to forward deploy a guy, then spend if I get initiative, have them like dash onto a point, loot it for free, and then move back into cover where there's no way they're getting shot. It's super cheeky and super fun.
Yeah, you did this concealed position on me when we played this weekend, and then you barely beat me.
Well, Chuck, that's just because you're a good player, man. But it's a powerful tool nonetheless.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And then motive, force, vitality.
Yeah, this is the way AdMech heal because they don't have any sort of medic, which is a shame. But it's not too bad. Just spend a command point, heal the operative that's activated for D3 wounds. It's not the greatest, but it's really good for getting out of injury breakpoints, especially on Rust Stalkers. Because most of the time, the damage they're taking is either like, or at least in my experience, power weapons are a very common profile. And if you're killing someone, odds are they can hit you with a crit for 6 damage. Boom, spend a command point, you're out of injury aura, and you're out of injury status, and you're back to full ability to fight. So it's really good.
So let's talk a little bit about their tac ops. So they have Seek and Destroy and Recon as their uh what are they called? Archetypes.
Archetypes.
And then you have a couple of tac ops to go with it. Is there now do you lean into Seek and Destroy or Recon generally?
I'm 90. No, I'm 100% Seek and Destroy. I think Recon is neat, but I think it's not good for a team that rewards you for playing on objectives. And I'd rather just use the Seek and Destroy to get, we discussed earlier the Wrestler Charge Fight loot. Why don't you do that and then also have Eliminate Guards or something like that on? This is a super killy team, so Seek and Destroy gets rewarded with them.
Now, for your tac ops, most teams have like a tac op that's good. What's the one good tac op?
So unfortunately, that's kind of where Hunter Clade's biggest weakness is there's not the first option isn't great where at the end of a turning point you have to have no enemy farther than 6 from your opponent or from one of your guys, and then if you do that you score a point. It's pretty bad. Don't take it. Assassination order is their third option. It's just assassinate target, but with even more requirements, because if you kill them, you get a point, and then if you kill them within 3, you get the second. So it's okay, but just take normal assassinate target if you're going to bring it. However, calculated eradication is a complicated one, but essentially, if the enemy suffers more wounds than you do in a turn, gain a point, do it again for a second point. That's the one I bring the most out of these three, but specifically into stuff like Felgor and Orcs, where they've got a really high HP pool, but with a bad save. So it's really easy to just put a ton of damage into them and then score those points.
So you seek and destroy most of the time, and then calculated eradication some of the time.
Yeah, some of the time into stuff that's generally like a 5-up save with a high HP. So, like I said, Felgor, Orcs, Gellerpox. Generally, teams that are melee focused only, so you can try and get it on turn one with a cheeky like vantage shot or something.
All right. So if I'm following along, we have for our operatives, we have the Skitarii Vanguard Alpha.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Vanguard Dictat,
Yep.
the Vanguard Surveyor,
Mm-hmm.
2 Vanguard Gunners.
Yes.
We have a Ruststalker Assassin.
Yeah, generally,
3 Ruststalker Assassins.
yes, if this is the take all list, 3 of them.
Okay. And then 2 Infiltrators.
No, a single infiltrator, and then 2 of the Vanguard Shock Troopers, which will give you 7 Skitarii and 4 Sicarians.
All right. So what are we putting on them for equipment?
So, if you're bringing Assassin...
Actually, real quick before we do that,
Mm-hmm.
let's go through all the equipment first.
Okay, yeah.
We'll go through what we actually like. So uplinked vid feed.
Yeah, for 1 point, you can make it that each time this operative performs an Overwatch action, you don't suffer the -1 to your ballistic skill. Kind of neat. Then the next one we've got, Servo Skull. For 2 points, you can, once per turning point, during this operative's activation, can perform a mission action for 1 less AP to a minimum of 0. Pretty much just a free mission action. There's very rare, other than narrative, where it's anything more than a 1. Always good.
And you can use that every turn, right?
Yes, every turn. So it's extremely valuable.
So does this go on a Ruststalker or Infiltrator?
Most of the time on the Infiltrator, if I'm not doing any sort of forward deployments or not bringing any, I might sometimes put it on my leader. So then you can have, if it's like, you got 5 of the Ruststalkers and your leader, you can have 6 pseudo 3 APL guys on your team.
And this is only one. This is a limited item, so you can only put it on one guy.
Yeah, if you could bring it on everyone, I might be bringing 5 of them every time.
All right, Mechadendrites, another limited item.
Yep, it's kind of like Servo Skull, but instead of a mission action, it's once per turning point. You can do a pickup action for 1 less AP. Kind of neat, but I don't bring recon, so I rarely use it.
So only good for recon then.
Pretty much, unless any core game mode comes out soon where we're going to start having to do pickup, there's not really much of a reason to bring this unless you're doing the recon secondaries.
And then Sense Bearer.
Yeah, this is a one I don't bring too often, but it's kind of neat. 2 cost, and each time a friendly operative within 3 of the operative that has the Sense Bearer equipment is activated, you can ignore any and all modifiers to their movement characteristic.
Command Uplink 4 EP. I've never seen a 4 EP item.
Yeah, this is trash. Never bring it. For 2 APL, and it has to be on your comms operative. So for 2 APL, you can use this action to add 1 command point to your pool, and you cannot perform this action within 6 of an enemy operative. It's
So
a really...
You just stand at the back and like farm CP?
Yeah, like, which is cool in theory, except that means your comms guy isn't passing out APL, which is the entire point of a comms guy. And for 4 equipment, it's just way too expensive and way too little of a benefit compared to the cost that you're taking.
All right, then we got Enriched Rounds, which looks like Blessed Bolts.
Somewhat. It's only 2 EP, and you can add 1 to a Radium Carbine or Radium Pistol's normal damage. If you're bringing Shock Troopers, you're always bringing this because 3/4 rending is a very solid profile when you can have a bunch of rerolls. It's just good.
Now, Optimized Gate. This is the secret sauce here, right?
Yeah, this, if you're bringing a Ruststalker, you are always bringing this. There's never a reason you're skipping Optimized Gate, because for 1 equipment point, you can make it on a Ruststalker that the first time they climb, drop, or traverse during that activation, you ignore the first 2 inches of that. So essentially, you can just jump over barricades as if they weren't there, which is really good for setting up one-way charges.
Now, is this something that you're thinking about when you're setting up your team and setting up your barricades and stuff that you like, hey, I'm going to put a barricade here knowing that it's blocking this, but I know I can get over it because I got like robot legs?
Yep, absolutely. So the Sicarians, one of their biggest weaknesses is they come on 40 millimeter bases, so it's really easy to block them with barricades and make their charges worse, which is why you bring this. And then because the Scutaria are on 25s, if you're fighting a team that's on 28 or like 32 millimeter bases, you can do some really cheeky like one-way doors.
And this is only on the rust stalkers, but not the infiltrators, right?
That is correct. Only on Rust Stalkers.
And then refractor field.
Yeah, Refractor Field, leader operative only for 3 equipment points. They get a 4 invuln save. It's kind of neat, but I don't bring it all that often.
So what's your or take all comers team again? We're going 4-7
Yep,
with the vanguards and long leg robots.
yep.
What's your equipment?
So, take all comers. If there's Rust Stalkers, they're all getting optimized gate. Let's say it's 3 Rust Stalkers, so that's 3 points. I'm going to bring an Infiltrator and give them the Servo Skull, which brings me from 3 to 5 points total. I'm going to then spend my next 4 points on enriched rounds for the 2 basic Shock Troopers to give them better bullets, because, like I said, 3-4 running is really good, and it can make them a significant threat into any sort of like 8 HP team or lower, because 2 crits kills them, and if not that, a crit and a hit going through will kill a guardsman or make an elf at 1 HP. Always good. And then so you're at 9 points. You're going to spend your last points on giving an uplinked vid feed to your arc gunner. Mostly the reason I put on the arc gunner is the plasma gunner always has a huge target on their back. It's a plasma gunner. We all know why. So putting something for 1 point, it's all you can spend it on. You might as well put it on your arc gunner just in case they make an overwatch or a guard action, particularly. They don't suffer that -1 to hit.
All right, so we got basic team loadout. We've got tac ops. We've got strat ploys. We've got tac ploys. We've got equipment. And let's talk a little bit about the team itself. And I mean, I guess people can look up the profiles, but what's kind of the basic? What's your basic strategy when you set up? I mean, like what is your how does this team play? Like are you going to sit back and be cagey? Are you going to be super aggressive? And just in general, like I mean, I know it's going to change based on the team you're playing against.
Yeah, of course. So that's part of the reason why I adore Hunter Clade so much, is that they're a team that's very jack of all trades. Into certain matchups, you're going to be super aggressive. Into others, you're going to play a little more cagey. But the best way I can describe them is they're not a turn 1 team; they are a turn 2 team. The main thing I'll look for, depending on the map and the objectives, is if there's like 2 objectives in the center that I know my opponent's going to be on. For turn 1, my main goal will be getting my leader, with the control edict, which is that double activation ability, set up in the middle of the board within 2 Rust Stalkers on either side. So if you can win initiative, you can have 2 Rust Stalkers activate to then go charge and kill a bunch of people. Otherwise, if, like I discussed, if it's loot, you want to always be looking for that 4 deploy infiltrator to try and make it 4-2, because anytime you can 4-2, that's good. And then if you win initiative turn 2, you can do it again. Doing 2 rounds of 4-2 practically can guarantee you the win. And then last thing you can do is on turn 1, I would say 100% of the time you want to use aggressor imperative, which is that +1 inch to your movement. It's similar to like elves and guards with their into the breach. Any sort of early movement you can get, or like extra movement you can get in the pre-game or turn 1, will always be super useful. And it allows you to oftentimes reach vantage points with your gunners to then shoot someone on an objective. Otherwise, we're a very mixed threat team, so you want to rely on Rust Stalkers and Infiltrators taking out key targets with their melee power, with their melee prowess, and then rely on your gunners and your shock troopers to either be action monkeys standing on the objective and using martial protocol to really make sure that every time they shoot, you're hitting like a truck.
So what would you say the main strength of Hunter Clade is? Like when you roll up and you pull up BCP and you're like, oh, okay, I'm playing this guy, and you see their team. What's the team that you're like, oh yeah, I got this match?
Pretty much any elite matchup, just because having five Rustalkers that can pretty easily go 1 for 1, and then having two reliable full range shooting gunners, and then your leader's like arc pistol as well, but hits on twos. You can pretty much just melt elites. It's probably the easiest matchup for us. I'd say Phobos might be the easiest, just because they don't even have the extra wounds that like Intercession do, and very little damage reduction. And you can just charge them with Rustalkers and kill them pretty reliably. Um, But what makes the team nice is they're very much a jack of all trades team. Like, I'm never going to outshoot Pathfinders on Hunter Clade, but I will easily out melee them, and I can bring guys that can do it reliably. And I'm never going to out melee, Felgor, but I can outshoot them. And you just have options on the team. They're very much a toolbox team, which is in part why I love them as well.
So what's the team then that you see the pairings and you're like, oh crap?
Thankfully, very few teams, but our biggest weaknesses are melee, so Gellerpox and Chaos Colt in particular. Thankfully, both have kind of been reduced, and you don't see a ton of them, which is nice. But there are teams that are just tanky and have a lot more activations and bodies than us, so it can be hard for us to like kill them all without running out of steam ourselves. As well as we innately have no grenades, like no real blast. We have a blast 1 inch on our leader's pistol, but I never take it, and you have no indirects. So dealing with hordes can be really awkward.
So now this weekend, you and I played for the first time, and
Yeah, it was a great time.
I did have it was really fun. It was very killy, and I chose my team based on a random roulette wheel roll, and I got intercession, and you only beat me by 2 points, and it came down to like a couple dice rolls at the end. What happened in that game, Connor?
I was just too focused on killing you, Chuck.
You did say that you were gonna. I mean, you talked some pretty big shit before the
I
game
did.
about
I talked
like,
a mad amount of shit.
and then it came down to like we almost tied actually, and it came down to like a couple dice rolls at the end. So did you get overconfident, or am I? Is Was it the Emperor protecting and the Omnissiah failing? Like, I mean, you did win, but
I did win, so that's all that matters. The Emperor and might have protected you a little bit more rather than the on the side hooking me up, even though they're the same person. And you're just a good player as well, so you obviously know what to do into them, because Intercession is often a team that newer players are attracted to, which means it's a little bit easier to beat them up. And of course, I talk way more shit than I can ever back up because I'm a fool like that.
you did talk a lot of shit. You were very dead set on that you were gonna destroy me off the board, and it came down to like the final couple dice rolls,
Well, Chuck,
and
I was
you
just doing
flipping
that
me
to
off at the end.
ensure content that no matter what happened, we'd at least have a year's worth of conversation for the podcast of you teasing me if I lost, or me just being like, well, yeah, I beat you. So, that's that.
Yeah. So I want to play you again. I want to actually like I'd like to play you with either like maybe Casterkin or like I've been feeling the Brood Brothers recently, and so yeah, I'd like to play you again. It was a fun game though, and I think that's the first time I've actually played against Hunter Clade too. So playing like the Hunter Clade Master and taking him to the limit with my little intercessors, it was pretty fun.
Yeah, well done. I mean, you are Killscream 2's second place champion, so you know what you're doing.
Yeah,
You're a good player, Chuck. Don't get me wrong.
I'll always be second to your dad. So
Yeah.
so like if you could get it, like just a brief synopsis. We've talked a lot about like all the things a hunter click can do, but like what's your recommendation for someone who hears this podcast and somehow is inspired by what we've talked about and wants to pick up the robots? Like where do they start and where do they go, and like what's their path to toaster glory?
Like in terms of how to build the team, or
I mean, building the team or just how to get started with the team, because I feel like it is a little daunting of a team because, like you said, there's like 54 operatives, and disregardingdice.com has your new addition to the Hunter Clade guide, but like. I mean, if they're gonna they're gonna walk into a GW store tomorrow and buy like one box. What's the first box they get?
So unfortunately, the team has to be a two-box
One
team. If
box. They're buying one
no,
box. No, first box starting out.
the first box has to be Skitari then because it's the only way you're getting a legal amount of operatives. But unfortunately, you quite literally have to buy two boxes. They're a White Dwarf team, which all of them seem to be a buy multiple box team. But if you're only playing with Skitari, you're gonna have a bad time because half your ploys don't work, and you're just guardsmen with less bodies, slightly better stats, but no melee prowess.
All right, so a box of Skitari and a box of Restalkers.
Yes. Thankfully, the Skitari come with both options in the box, and the Sicarians come with both options in the box. They're newer kits, which is nice. They're not too complicated to build. There's a lot of pieces, but you can either micro assembly them, which is what I'd recommend doing, at least for the Skitari,
Don't do that.
because you want to do it a little bit. Just don't attach the legs to the bodies until you paint the inside of the cloak, because if you attach them to the base and you care about painting that inside, it's going to be so difficult. But like I said, you're gonna want to build them. I've got the full description in the guide there, so I definitely recommend it because I go into an extraordinary amount of detail of how to build them with pieces. But you're gonna build, seven Skitari. I'd recommend all Vanguard, but there's two pieces in the box that can be either Ranger or Vanguard heads. And if you want to experiment, which is what I'd say do, I don't like Rangers, but some people do. Try it out with those. Use those two separate heads on the Gunners, just so it's easy to tell for your opponent. And then for the Sicarian box, you're going to build your leader in that box as the infiltrator because he gets a cool hat and a dope cloak, and he just looks really cool. And it's easy to stand out the infiltrator. And then the other four will be the rust stalkers. And then what I'd recommend doing is just doing the all comers list: seven Skitari, four Sicarians. Of those four Sicarians, one will always be an infiltrator, and just get a bunch of reps in. The team's got a lot of things going on for them. They're not the most complicated, but there's just so many options available to them that you're going to have to learn what those options are. And the best way to do that is just getting some reps in. But by like game five, they're thankfully simple enough that you're going to understand most of the tricks they can do. And it's just a matter of learning to know when to use those tricks, essentially.
Now, if you could change one thing about the Hunter Clade besides giving them an indirect weapon, what, or besides a grenade, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I would like the Rangers guns instead of heavy. I'd like them to get cumbersome. I think bringing Rangers that way would be a lot more exciting. And then also giving the pursuers thing, they if you bring the Ranger dash option, make it that you can fly. With it, like you normally can when you bring that scouting option, I think that would make me way more interested in bringing Rangers and just more reliable. If we wanted to get really crazy with it, give bonuses to the other three leader options, so you're not bringing the Vanguard Alpha every time. Just because it would be more fun to have like those three options actually worth taking.
Yeah, I think it's always nice when you can switch out to any leader. I think that that's one thing that's cool about Brood Brothers is actually like the Patriarch, the Magus, and the Primus are all like legit options depending on who you're going against. It kind of sucks that you only got the one there. I feel like a lot of
Yeah,
teams suffer from that too because like Kashyyykin, like you're bringing the chainsword and the plasma pistol. Like
yeah,
it's nice when you have a little bit of. I know there's not a lot of team building in this edition, and new edition is on the horizon, but it would be nice to have a little bit more options. I feel like you do get quite a bit of that with Hunterclade though. Besides, nobody wants Rangers.
yeah. Like some people do, but I just think they're a trap. What I like to see is like the Sicarian infiltrator princeps. He's got a built-in servo skull on like into the data sheet, which is pretty cool. But losing the control edict, that double activation play, is just so bad that the only time I'd ever consider bringing the infiltrator is if you're playing like loot on Into the Dark, and even then it's a rough trade-off because double activating like your just two guys is so powerful.
Well, Connor, thank you for chatting with us about your true love. Sorry, Sierra.
No,
Um,
it's her, but they're a good second.
any last words you wanna impart upon us about the wisdom of the Omnissiah?
Yeah, like I said, that double activation ploy, be looking forward to that. One thing I'd recommend doing is looking to have your leader or another vanguard nearby shoot or do a mission action or something, and then charge a key target. And then for the second activation, have a Rustdogger charge up and fight that operative that the Skitarii charged, because now the operative you're fighting is going to be hitting one worse, and then the Rustdogger is going to be hitting on twos with 5 dice hitting on twos, and if you turn on the reroll in melee combat, you can guarantee so much damage. I've killed Gellerpox, like the big hulks, in a single round of combat, doing stuff like that, even through the 5 feel no pain.
Well, Connor, this has really inspired me. I think I really actually want to paint up my Hunter Clade.
You're gonna paint them in basic box art, aren't you, Chuck?
I'm gonna paint them as basic Mars bitches.
No, I don't even have anything necessarily against Mars. I just know you can paint so well, and I want to see you do one of the minor forge rolls.
I appreciate that. You did send me that other one I really liked, which was pretty close to Mars because I like the red cloaks. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna lie.
the red cloaks are good. Don't get me wrong, but there's so many other. There's like 5 different forge worlds that use other styles of red cloaks, which is really fun.
So real quick tweezer,
Hmm.
real quick teaser for next week. What was your me Connor, me Tyler, Nick, and Johan and Sam all spent some time at the coast this past weekend. What was your favorite part of the weekend?
Ooh, it was just great seeing everyone. It's always super fun. Me and Nick had a blast just quoting Arrested Development quotes for like the entire time, so that was super good.
I do have to
Uh,
say it was pretty fucking adorable. So a little bit of teaser for next week. Connor, Nick, and I got to the beach house we went to on Thursday evening, and we went and had dinner. We did a little bit of hobby time, and then we went to bed. And I had a room to myself because I organized it. So fuck it, I'm taking the good room. And Connor and Nick were in another room, and it was like a couple of schoolgirls. Like I almost went in there to tell them to shut the fuck up and go to sleep, but they were just like I could hear the two of them a room away just being like just quoting Arrested Development because they were so on it. And I think we watched like at least the first season and a half.
I think we got to the final episode of the first season. We weren't even paying attention. We just had it on in the background with enough volume that when we heard one of the quotes, we'd all burst out laughing.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. So
Yeah.
we'll reconvene next week with Tyler and we're gonna recap the entire weekend because it was super fun. We played bingo with things that we thought other people would say. We had a roulette wheel to see which kill teams were going to play. Connor played somebody other than Admech. He only played Admech
Once
twice.
out of the or
No, he
no,
played twice. You played
twice, yeah.
Tyler. Yeah, you played Tyler and you
Our
played
late
me.
night game, we played Hunter Clade, and we played our main, so we'd get to bed at somewhat reasonable hour.
And it still was 2 a.m. So
Well, we had to test out the maps, Chuck.
yeah, we tested a couple of Connors into the dark maps and they got pretty good reviews too. So who
Yeah,
knows? Maybe we'll see them later this year.
yeah, gonna get some beta testing. Either maybe this weekend, probably not because I'm going out of town again. So if not by this weekend, then next weekend when you're listening to this. So like the 20th of August, I'll have a document out with the first like 4 or 5 of them, and you can play on my maps and tell me how much they suck or how cool they are and how much you like them.
Well, they seem pretty cool. I didn't get a chance to play on any of them, but the playtesting we did was pretty neat. Also, we had some teases for the new season, new episode, new edition of
Oh
Kill Team
yeah,
coming
yeah.
out. And we only got little baby bits, but so by the time we reconvene next week, we'll have the beach weekend to talk about, and Friday in a couple of days is the new big reveals. And actually the Saturday is when the big reveal sounds like is.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna be getting one of those like full cinematic trailers. So I'm hoping it's like 15 minutes long.
I'm pretty sure it's like all AdMech too.
I wish. No. Of the two teams that are all but confirmed, Chuck, which one has you more excited between the Scions and the Vespid?
I mean, I'm an Imperial simp, and so like drop troopers sound amazing. I'm just hoping that like they somehow bring the Sanguinary Guard into it, which I don't think they will.
Well, if they ever release like a Space Marine flying version, I'm sure you can use your guard then, and
Yeah,
hopefully with some cooler wings.
I know they.
They look good, but the lack of
No, they
actual
don't.
wings
They
is.
don't. It's
You
no,
don't like the armor even?
no. I mean, the armor's fine. It,
The nipples lacking is a shame.
I need the nipples. Also,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I don't know. There's just a lot of character that they lost from what they were. Like, they were a little bit of a almost a caricature before, but now they look like I don't know. They look like Primaris Sanguinary Guard, and I mean they've got like some creases on their greaves on their shins, and the death masks kind of suck. I don't know. It's kind of underwhelming. The whole, especially after what they did for Black Templars and what they did for Dark Angels. Like there's so much more they could have done for the Blood Angels, and like Lamardis is cool, Astaroth is cool. The Sanguinor looks like just they took the old Sanguinor and made it high definition. Like there's been so many better Sanguinors, so
Hmm.
I think I'm gonna have to make my own for that. Like I don't know. Good
Well,
news is I'm playing Kill Team. I'm not worried about the rest of that. Do
yeah.
I have it already reserved at Mox? Yes, I do. But yeah, we'll see. Oh, I mean, yeah,
Well, Chuck, if you can bring them in boarding actions, then we can play on the new boarding actions, and I'm so excited for those too. But
I
this
did,
is a Kill Team podcast, so I can't talk about that.
nah, you can talk about it. I did see some. I saw some videos about the boarding action rules. I didn't watch them yet because it was like an hour long. I think it was like tabletop tactics or something.
Oh, I didn't see that. I just was reading the Goonhammer article, which Sierra saw the name of that website and was like, "What are you reading?" So that was fun to explain that it was, pre the new definition of what gooning is.
Yeah, well, I mean, you still do the other definition of gooning, so
I hate you. There we go.
yeah.
But yeah, boarding actions looks really exciting, and I'm getting the book for it soon, so we'll have to try that out.
We'll have to try it out because I packed up 1,000 points plus of Blood Angels for this last weekend, and
And then we didn't
I
even play 40k.
yeah, I did run them out as I played against Johann's using my orcs with my Blood Angels, so that was about as close as I got to it.
Yeah. But yes. Speaking of which, Scions have their own detachment in that, so hopefully the new Scion scopes are really good.
Yeah, hopefully. Are they gonna do new Scion sculpts? The old ones aren't bad. I'm not
Yeah,
mad at the old
the
ones. I
old
really
ones
dig
aren't.
like the old ones.
Yeah, so I'm just hopeful that the new ones like don't necessarily have the jetpacks automatically. Like you can use backpacks without it. So then I can hopefully have some like cool new ones too. But I'm not going to complain one way or the other. Scions are a great kit, so I hope they stick around for a while.
I'm sure they'll probably have both of the kits where they'll just have like a sprue with backpacks too, so you can do both.
Yeah. Well, I'm expecting new sprue just because it's like a new season box, or which always has two new sprues entirely. So they might break tradition. Who knows? But we might just get some better like proportions on because they have a little bit of that like old Cadian squattiness to them.
It's probably just gonna be like the Cadian box with a jetpack sprue.
I wouldn't necessarily hate that, but I would be disappointed because Cadians do look significantly different, like style of armor, than Scions.
No, I would hate that. That'd be horrible when
It'd
you
be
like
pretty lame,
the
but I'm trying
games.
to remain positive. Okay.
Well, thank you for everyone for joining us. Connor, where can the people find you?
At Spanaway, as always, thank you everyone if you've made it this far dealing with me talking about Hunter Clade. I'm so sorry. Kind
This
of.
has been like Connor's. I mean, this has been Connor's wet dream. Basically, is to have a captive audience who haven't turned this off already to be able to talk about AdMech for almost an hour now.
Yeah, it's been good. Thank you. And yeah, Chuck, where can the people find you?
I'm at Painted Cave Minis and I haven't posted in a while, but for real though, go check out Connor's guide to Hunter Clade. It's well renowned on the internet. He got mentioned on Just Another Kill Team podcast by
Yeah,
some
thank you,
people.
Sawyer, for shouting me out. Much appreciated, man.
Yeah, and then all the nerds on Reddit love it, and yeah, it's a very in depth discussion on toasters. So don't forget our buddy Tyler at Lowbrow Minis and
Dicethrower.bigcartel.com.
dicethrower.bigcartel.com. Also, Killstream
CRITCon.
3, CritCon, cascadingtabletop.com. You tickets are still available. we're selling tickets also too. We've got some swag on there too, actually, and I know that
Yeah,
Sam
true. I
left
didn't
his
realize
objective
there's
markers
objective
at the
markers you
beach
can add
house,
on.
and I
Add
have
those on.
those.
They look
But
really cool.
he went and got some of the Killscream ones recently, so we got new objective markers coming out for Killscream 3. Yeah, and 128 player golden ticket event in Portland, Oregon, October 4th, 5th, and 6th. Make sure you get your tickets for it. We are having an entire convention, CRITCon. There's going to be Age of Sigmar there, as well as some independent games. We're going to have some painting classes as well too. Listen last week to hear Dan Osborne chat with me about it. And yeah, come on join us.
Yeah, buy those tickets. Go buy them right now. Do it now. So then we can get super awesome prize support. Do it now. Go buy right now. Do it.
Connor, it's as someone who's been in sales for like 25 years, I can tell that you've never been in sales.
That's actually not true.
I've never been any good at sales, at least, because you're like, do it, buy it right now, do it, buy it,
I
do it,
just
come on, go.
I put enough pressure. And then it works because they feel bad for me.
Do they? I mean, if anybody buys a ticket based on the pressure that Connor has put on them from the podcast and his smooth selling, like,
I think
please
it's
ping me, let me know.
Yeah, and also more importantly than that, if there's anyone, literally anyone out on the earth that agrees with me that aggressors are cooler than base Terminators, I'm not talking Horus Heresy Terminators, they're really sick, but just base tech Dreadnought Terminator, whatever the armor is called. Please let me know. I'm trying to see if I'm literally the only person out there that thinks aggressors are cooler.
So based on the feedback, and we had a giant argument about it this weekend at the coast, you're literally the only person.
I might be, but I'll
Okay.
gladly wear that badge of shame/honor.
All right. So if anybody wants to wear the sad badge of shame with Connor and says that aggressors are cooler than Terminators, hit us up. Okay.
Please do. Go follow us and buy those Killscream tickets.
All right, buddy. Have a good night.
You too, boy.